Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today I'm going to be counting down my top 10 favorite metal subgenres and breaking down their defining albums. When I say defining albums, I mean the album that, in my opinion, best represents that subgenre of metal, and, everybody's picks will be different here for their favorite subgenres, as well as their picks for the defining albums, but my picks here are strictly opinion-based, so that being said, let's get started here with my number 10. Kicking us off here with my number 10, I'm going to go with the subgenre of nu metal. And, I think nu metal can be very hit or miss for me sometimes, but when it works, nu metal is fantastic. Popularized by groups like Slipknot, System of a Down, and Disturbed. Some of its influences include heavy metal, industrial, hip-hop, and rock, so a really interesting grouping there of influences. And, as for its defining album, I'm going to go with Iowa by Slipknot, their sophomore record, and in my opinion, one of their best. And, even though I do love modern-day Slipknot, I think one thing they're lacking is the aggression that they had on some of their earlier albums, including Iowa here. Just blisteringly, bone-crunchingly heavy lead vocals on here by Corey Taylor. Great drumming by Joey Jordison as well. Really heavy backing vocals on here. Just, in my opinion, what embodies Slipknot and, in turn, embodies the nu metal genre, or I should say everything that I love about the nu metal genre here. So Iowa by Slipknot, definitely one of their best, and, in my opinion, the defining nu metal album. Coming in at number 10 here, I'm going to go with the subgenre of nu metal and its defining album, Iowa by Slipknot. Next at number 9, I'm going to go with doom metal, and, obviously doom metal is meant to convey a more doomy atmosphere and a more doomy sound, but it also focuses on slower tempos and low-tuned guitars, and, I was thinking about which album here to choose as its defining album, and one that I was thinking about picking was Epicus Doomicus Metallicus by Candlemass, and then I thought maybe I should take this all the way back to the beginning here with some of the pioneering doom metal albums from the Black Sabbath catalog, so I was really torn between Master of Reality and Volume 4, but I decided to go with Volume 4 here because I just think that the riffs on here are more doomy and sludgy by Tony Iommi. Definitely some of Tony Iommi's best riffs on this album, including Cornucopia, which is just so doomy and heavy, and one of my favorite riffs of all time, actually. Great stuff on this album, and definitely a pioneering record for doom metal because of the doomy riffs here by Tony Iommi that are just so heavy. And, one of the best parts of the Black Sabbath sound is the riffing by Tony Iommi, and he definitely shines on this album here with a pioneering doom metal album, in my opinion. So I decided to go all the way back to the start here with Volume 4 by Black Sabbath as the defining doom metal album. So coming in at number 9, I'm going to go with doom metal and its defining album, Volume 4 by Black Sabbath. Following that up with my number 8, I'm going to go with groove metal, which is focused on heavier, more groove-oriented guitar riffs, tuned-down guitars, thick bass lines, and raspy lead vocals here. And, groove metal rose to prominence in the 90s with bands like Pantera, Machine Head, and White Zombie, and it was really difficult here for me to choose a defining album, and I only wanted to pick one album per subgenre here for every entry on this list, so not to water down the list, but for this particular entry, I'm going to go with a tie here, so I'm going to pick two albums as the defining records of the groove metal subgenre, so the first of which being Vulgar Display of Power by Pantera from 1992. Fantastic album here, some really heavy guitar riffs here by Dimebag Darrell, and some really fantastic groove metal riffs on tracks like Mouth for War, A New Level, Walk, right, This Love, Hollow, right, great stuff there. And my other pick is going to be The Law by Ex-Hoarder. And, Ex-Hoarder are a band that don't nearly get talked about enough as much as they should, and a band that really did help to pioneer the groove metal genre tenfold. They're a band that get very minimal recognition and kind of exist in the shadow of Pantera, but another fantastic group that helped to pioneer the groove metal subgenre here, and The Law is a great album and one of the most important for groove metal as well, so I'm going to go with two albums here as a tie for my defining album of the groove metal subgenre, that of course being Vulgar Display of Power and The Law by Ex-Hoarder. Coming in at number 7, I'm going to go with industrial metal, popularized by bands like Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson, and Ministry. Industrial metal is characterized by, distorted vocals on the usage of synths or sequencer lines, and as for its defining album here, I'm going to go with The Fragile by Nine Inch Nails, and, for a very long time, I thought that The Downward Spiral was the best Nine Inch Nails album, but slowly but surely, The Fragile started to grow on me more and more, and is a fantastic record here. I think it's the best album Trent Reznor ever made. Lyrically, it's fantastic, super heavy in that sense, and what I think the Fragile does so well is take all of my favorite aspects from the Downward Spiral and present them here in a much more polished manner. So I do really appreciate that, and in my opinion, there's no better industrial metal album than the Fragile here by Nine Inch Nails from 1999. So coming in at number 7 here, I'm going to go with industrial metal and its defining album, The Fragile by Nine Inch Nails. You know, a while back in the unpopular opinions video that I did here on the channel, I stated that I hated every metal subgenre ending in the word core, such as metalcore, grindcore, deathcore, and while I still stand by that, I neglected to mention that that does not include hardcore punk, which is my number 6 here on the list, and hardcore punk is a heavier, more musically aggressive version of punk rock, and its defining album, in my opinion, is Earth AD, Wolf's Blood here by the Misfits from 1983, their sophomore album in the final with Glenn Danzig on lead vocals, and it's my favorite Misfits album. It's got some fantastic hardcore punk material on here, such as Earth AD, Devil Lock, Death Comes Ripping, Wolf's Blood, Demonomania, Blood Feast, We Bite. Great stuff on here, and like I said, it's my favorite Misfits album, and in my opinion, it's the defining hardcore punk album. So coming in at number 6 here, I'm going to go with hardcore punk, and its defining album, Earth AD, Wolf's Blood here by the Misfits. Moving on now into the top 5, and coming in at number 5 here, I'm going to go with death metal, characterized by lower tune guitars with heavy distortion and often brutal, deep growling vocals. Death metal brought about a more intense, aggressive style of metal, made famous by bands such as Death, Cannibal Corpse, and Morbid Angel, just to name a few. And as for its defining album here, I'm going to go with Leprosy by Death, their sophomore album here, and one of the most important death metal albums ever made here. From 1988, this album definitely did bring about a change in the death sound from their debut, Scream Bloody Gore from 1987, and it's the band really starting to move in a more death metal direction here, and of course Death would be so influential in pioneering the death metal genre, so a very important album here, super heavy stuff. Chuck Schuldiner sounds menacing on lead vocals here, great vocals by Chuck Schuldiner, and as for some standout tracks here, Leprosy is great, Forgotten Past, Pull the Plug, Open Casket, Primitive Ways. Great stuff on this entire album, in my opinion. From top to bottom, it is stacked, and like I said, I think it's the defining death metal album. So coming in at number 5 here, I'm going to go with death metal. Well, this might be a bit polarizing at my number 4, but I've always enjoyed many great hair bands to come out of the LA Strip in the mid-'80s, such as, Cinderella, Rat, Dokken, Wasp, great bands like that, and personified with power ballads, pop rock influences, and an overall more glammy 80s theme image. Hair metal, as in my opinion, one of the most fun metal subgenres to listen to. So coming in at number 4 here, I'm going to go with hair metal. And, as for its defining album, a lot of people would probably go with something from Motley Crue or Poison, Def Leppard, something that they would hear on the stadium tour going around right now. But I've never been a big fan of those bands, so instead I'm going to go with Cinderella and their debut album, Night Songs here. And, Cinderella I always thought were a fantastic band with a pretty unfortunate name and image that kind of limited them to the popularity of hair metal at the time. And, after hair metal peaked, they kind of were swept by the wayside. But I think they're a fantastic band and a very talented group of guys. Tom Kiefer is a great vocalist, and their debut album is great, with some fantastic tracks on here like Night Songs, Shake Me, Nobody's Fool, Nothing for Nothing, Somebody Save Me, and Back Home Again. Great stuff on here, and like I said, I'm not a big fan of bands like Motley Crue or Poison or Def Leppard, so coming in at number 4 here, I'm going to go with hair metal and its defining album, that is Night Songs by Cinderella, their great debut record. Breaking into the top 3 now, and for my number 3, I'm going to go with progressive metal. And, progressive metal is really when elements of metal are mixed with the proficiency of prog rock. And, I think progressive metal definitely does detail a more proficient and technically sound style of playing, and this can almost get to the point where it can be self-indulgent at times, but in the best way possible. And, progressive metal was made popular by groups like Dream Theater, Opeth, and Tool. So, as for its defining album here, I'm going to go with Images and Words by Dream Theater, which, for whatever reason, I don't own that album, and it's an album that I desperately need to pick up, but in my opinion, it's the best progressive metal album, and it's the best Dream Theater album as well. A fantastic sophomore record, and the first with James LaBrie on lead vocals. It's a great album from beginning to end, and its greatness is not just limited to the popularity of Pull Me Under. The whole album is stacked from beginning to end. Great playing on here, awesome vocals, just all in all, what is in my opinion the defining and essential progressive metal album. So coming in at number 3 here, I'm going to go with progressive metal and its defining album, Images and Words by Dream Theater. Originating in the San Francisco Bay Area, my pick for number 2, Thrash Metal, is personified with aggressive, fast-tempo tracks that feature shredding guitars and rapid-fire lead vocals, and thrash was made popular by the big 4 of thrash metal, that of course being Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, and Megadeth. But even outside of the big 4, there are some fantastic thrash metal bands, such as Testament, Creator, Exodus, Flotsam and Jetsam as well, just to name a few. So not limited to the success of the Big Four. There are some fantastic thrash metal bands outside of the Big Four as well. But when it came to picking the defining album here, I was very torn between Ride the Lightning by Metallica and Rain and Blood by Slayer. But ultimately, I decided to go with Ride the Lightning here because Metallica are my second favorite band, and Ride the Lightning is my favorite Metallica album here. It's stacked from beginning to end, one of the best sophomore albums ever made, in my opinion, with tracks on here like Fight Fire with Fire, Ride the Lightning, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black, Trapped Under Ice is a fantastic deep cut as well, Call of Cthulhu, and Creeping Death. Just great tracks on here from beginning to end, and like I said, it's my favorite Metallica album. So coming in at number 2, I'm going to go with Thrash Metal, and its defining album, Ride the Lightning here by Metallica. And finally, coming in at number 1, I'm going to go with heavy metal. Simply heavy metal is the heavier side of rock and the subgenre from which all other metal subgenres derive from, popularized and established by bands like Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, and Deep Purple, then later by groups like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. It was very difficult to pick the defining album here because there are so many candidates, but ultimately I decided to go with Number of the Beast here by Iron Maiden from 1982. And the reason I did this is because it'd be very hard to imagine how heavy metal would look today if Iron Maiden had not succeeded the way that they did in the 80s here, with Bruce Dickinson joining the band here, replacing Paul Di'Anno. He took the group to the next level on Number of the Beast and beyond, with great tracks on this album like Invaders, Children of the Damned, The Prisoner, 22 Acacia Avenue, The Number of the Beast, and then of course, in my opinion, the best heavy metal song ever written, Hallowed Be Thy Name, which definitely sealed the deal for me as my number 1 pick. So it'd be very difficult to imagine how metal would look today without Bruce Dickinson joining Iron Maiden and making just perfect album after perfect album in the 80s here with Iron Maiden. So coming in at number 1, I'm going to go with heavy metal and its defining album, the absolute metal essential that is Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. So that wraps up my list here of top 10 metal subgenres and their defining albums, which should be visible right over here. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications to be notified of a new upload, and let me know down in the comments below what are some of your favorite metal subgenres. I'd be very interested in hearing your opinions, so let me know all that good stuff down in the comments. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.